Okay, so let me just first introduce myself. I am Aris Talapian. I'm the Director of Customer Success Organization at Galvanize. So my team is basically responsible for the implementation and continuous adoption of Galvanize GRC and data analytics technology across the Asia-Pacific region. I'm a CPA by profession, and I've been with Galvanize for almost 5 years now, and I have a total 18 years of experience in finance operation, controllership, GRC, internal control, and technology consulting. Actually, I'm very excited to discuss the topic about fraud because for me, it's a very timely topic and relevant to most of us. So all organizations across the world are subject to fraud risk. We have seen all over the news that large frauds have led to the downfall of entire organizations, massive investment losses, significant legal costs, incarceration of key individuals, and erosion of confidence in capital markets. Many publicized fraudulent behavior by key executive has negatively impacted the reputations, brands, and images of many organizations around the globe. I have looked into few narratives and studies regarding fraud, and I would like to highlight few things here, few interesting things here. So one of which is the study of Deloitte that was conducted in 2018. The publication is entitled Fighting Fraud with Analytics. According to them, fraud is costing $2.1 trillion globally per year. That's 2.1 trillion. That is more than the GDP of Brazil, which is the 8th largest economy in the world. If we're going to look at the US healthcare sector alone, it has about 3.5 trillion in revenue. And estimatedly, they have lost up about $175 billion every year on fraud. That's a substantial amount of money. Another interesting narrative or study that I've seen is based on the Intel study or article published in 2017 entitled Stay Ahead of Fraud with Big Data Analytics. According to them, the typical amount of revenue loss to fraud is about 5%. So imagine if your organization or your company has a ongoing revenue of 100 million, there's a potential or probability that you're gonna lose like $5 million in fraud every year. That's a huge amount of money. Just recently, interestingly, I read an article published in Atlanta Journal Constitution. And according to that, there's a news that there's a CFO in a company pleaded guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. She allegedly abused her position as CFO to issue 100 checks to pay her personal expenses such as cruises, vacation expenses, and retail purchases. She even falsified entries on the company's check register and ledger to disguise the checks and hide the payer's name. So this kind of corporate fraud can be prevented if there's a proper fraud prevention or management program in place. According to the survey that's conducted by PwC in 2018, they found out that 44% of respondents are planning to increase spending on fraud prevention and economic crime over the next 2 years. The report also says that most of this money is going toward the more powerful technology and data analytics. So today, we're going to look at how to implement a successful fraud management program, including consideration and techniques for detecting fraud and the types of tests you can run. And I will give you some number of practical examples on how you can apply in a different range of business functions. I will also share with you on how data analytics technology, such as galvanized ACL robotics, can help you to kick off your fraud prevention program. But before that, when we talk about fraud prevention program, there are two important concepts: big data and data analysis. But what is big data? According to Ernst & Young, big data describes a company's massive portfolio of data that is unstructured and machine generated. as well as data that reside outside the corporate boundaries. So by this definition, it means that those information outside the corporate boundaries that includes social media information, Internet of Things, vendor information are all part of your company's big data. On the other hand, data analytics is by no means a new concept. So it's been a while for a long time. The application of data analysis is widely accepted and cut across different fields like fraud. So for anybody who is new to data analytics, it actually refers to qualitative and quantitative techniques and processes used to enhance productivity and business gain. So what happened in data analytics is that data is extracted, aggregated, harmonized, and categorized to identify and analyze trends, patterns, and anomalies. Ultimately, it streamlines a manual and laborious techniques in order to aid organizations and individuals to more efficiently reach a quantifiable conclusion and make a calculated decision based on real-time data or information. But why is it important to implement data analytics tool for fraud detection and prevention? According to ACFE or ACFE, proactive data monitoring was associated with 52%, that's 52% lower losses, and frauds can be detected half the time. This is because data analytics tools can automatically search 100% of your transactions for indicators of fraud. So gone are the days that you do manual sampling of data just to look for potential fraudulent transactions because it doesn't give you a good population of data sets. Data analytics tool also can easily merge, normalize, and compare data from different systems and sources. So if you're going to analyze, if you're going to look at fraud that includes different data sources, it's going to be very difficult if you don't have an data analytics tool. So you have to implement a data analytics tool to capture information from different data sources. Quickly identify fraud before it becomes material. Data analytics tool also strategically realigns resources to focus on detection effort on suspicious transactions. So with data analytics, we are not actually looking and investigating all the transaction in your big data. It actually identifies potential or suspicious transaction, and then you can focus your effort to look at that particular suspicious transactions. So it gives you efficiency and effectiveness in terms of your fraud detection. Another one is significantly reduce sampling error, definitely, and improve your internal controls. And lastly, save time by automating repetitive tests. So the advanced data analytics tools nowadays, they have that built-in functionality wherein you can do a continuous testing of your data. So before I introduce you to the fraud program, I just want to share with you some fraud data analysis techniques that actually you can use. So there are a number of specific analytic techniques that are effective in detecting and preventing fraud. One of which is actually Benford's Law. Benford's Law is a fascinating and very effective way of detecting potential fraud and intentional data manipulations. In Benford's Law is a common statistical technique. It basically states that a list of numbers from real sources of data are distributed into a specific and non-uniform way. This Benford's Law is particularly useful for detecting fraud in areas of purchasing and accounts payable. So according to this technique, the number 1 appears about 30% of the time. Subsequently, the number 2 occurs less frequently, the number 3, the number 4, all the way to number 9, which occurs less than 5% of the time. So the idea is to test certain points and numbers and identify those that appear more frequently than they are supposed to. So let's say if you base on your data sets, the number 9 appears more frequently, then it's something that is not normal. So you're probably just going to investigate it and drill down into investigate it a little bit further. Another helpful fraud data analytics technique is actually trend analysis. Analysis of trends across years or across departments or divisions can be very useful in detecting fraud. In a nutshell, the idea is that what has happened in the past will give insight into what will happen in the future. So using trend analysis, you can examine the general ledger balance over time. So once you have an expectation of what will happen, compare the trend to the expectation. So if the trend doesn't meet the expectation of what will happen, then you can investigate it a little bit further because it becomes suspicious. Another useful fraud detection technique is what we call ratio analysis. This is similar to the financial ratios that give indication to the relative health of a company. Data analysis ratios point to possible symptoms of fraud. In many cases, high ratios or abnormal values that deviate from industry standard or current business scenarios have often unearthed potential frauds that needs to be investigated. Another common fraud data analysis technique is duplicate transactions. Duplicate testing is one of the more common fraud tests because it can indicate fraud as well as inefficiency and inaccuracies in transactions. So running tests for duplicates transactions can determine, for example, you're getting duplicate invoice from somebody and whether it's deliberate or accidental. But we need to be very careful on using this kind of technique. You should properly investigate the transaction before jumping into a conclusion. Transactions that look like duplicates may simply be a progress payments or equal billing for monthly charges. The last technique that I would like to share is even amount, this is my favorite one. So even amounts don't happen often. So numbers that are rounded to tens, hundreds, and thousands might be considered anomalies and should be looked at more closely. So for example, consider the reimbursement of travel expenses. So your organization will have a maximum daily amount of travels, meals, and gas allowances. It's most likely that these amounts are set in even dollar amounts. Let's say $90 for dinner or $200 for accommodation. To ensure that this maximum aren't abused, the claim should be checked against receipts. It's very uncommon, for example, for a hotel room to come to a round figure with taxes included. So these are just few of the fraud data analytics that actually you can use to start off your fraud program. But what are the capabilities that we should look into in selecting a data analytics tool? So here are the 5 considerations that I would like to share to make sure that available when you select a data analytics technology. One is pre-built analytics routine. So the data analytics tool should have the capability to perform a pre-built analytics routines, like what I said a while ago, the Burnford's law, the duplicate as testing, classification, stratification, aging, joining, and so on and so forth. So a great data analytics tool should have those built-in capability already. Number 2 is the access to broad range of data. So there may be a requirement to compare data from range of data sources, both internal and external. So the technical structure of data from different sources may vary considerably. So specialized fraud and control testing software should include the ability to access and combine data in ways that are not commonly available in more general purpose software or from standard ERP system reports. The third one is data visualization, and this is very important. Dashboards that visually summarize the results of our analysis and test processing help your senior management review the trends in the nature and amount that section identified, so that they can also see the status of items that are unresolved or under investigation. So this form of reporting should ideally be integrated into an overall fraud management dashboard or tools to give you a timely visual representation of a fact-based insight driven by business transaction data. Number 4 is program management and remediation workflow. Software designed for continuous fraud monitoring should provide you with a remediation workflow. Exceptions generated by specific tests are automatically routed to specific individuals for review, and also can provide a notification of high-risk exception, maybe also be routed to more senior management. So a good data analytics tool should have a customizable remediation workflow to address the remediation. And lastly, procedure lagging. Procedure lagging, which generates a complete audit trail that may be required to support detailed investigation if needs to. So now we know that data analysis technology can help calculate the impact of fraud. So you can actually see how much is costing the organizations. But the question is, how are we going to start the fraud program? So these are the recommended 7 steps to start your fraud program. Number 1, write down all the different types of fraud. So write down all the different types of fraud that could occur in the areas that could occur in. So for example, looking at procure to pay. So what are the common fraud that can exist in procure to pay? Let's say a phantom vendor or a potential duplicate payment to vendors and things like that. Number 2, we conduct a fraud risk assessment. So try to measure the risk of fraud and the overall impact or the exposure to the organization. What would it cost if the fraud that you wrote down in the first step actually happened? What is the cost to the organization? Number 3, address the costliest item first. So we do prioritization. Set up an ad hoc testing to look for indicators of fraud in the areas. So based on that ad hoc analysis, investigate patterns and indicators that emerge and set up your continuous monitoring. Number 4, and which is very important, communicate the monitoring activity throughout the organization so employees and vendors are aware of the fact that you are paying very close attention to what's going on. Number 5, provide management with immediate notification when things are going wrong. Better to raise any issues right away than explain why they occurred later. Number 6 is fix any broken controls immediately. Segregation of duties is very important. If one person can initiate a transaction, approve the transaction, and also be the receiver of the good, then there's a problem. And lastly, expand the scope and repeat from step number 2. In implementing your fraud program, you may want to consider the following 20 tests across business function where fraud is very common. So this includes like the general ledger, the travel and entertainment, payroll, IT, procure to purchase, and order to cash. So these are just few of the common analytic tests that you can actually do to detect fraud. I just want to highlight one very common one is a T&E suspicious reimbursement. So here we identify employees claiming, let's say for example, they claim for fuel expenses when they're already claiming mileage expenses for personal vehicles. Another one is duplicate claims, or what we call double dipping. So this allows to identify employees who are creating duplicate claims. For example, by submitting the same expense under a corporate card transaction and also out-of-pocket transaction. So I actually have a personal experience on this because we implemented a POC in one of the companies in the Philippines, and we used this test to test their T&E. And then after we finished the POC, we identified that few sales representatives submitted their claims twice in their corporate card and also personal out-of-pocket transaction. Another one which is related to payroll is ghost employee. So this is really good, which identify any phantom employees being used for fraud. For example, channeling funds to an unauthorized party. So, for example, a payroll administrator has been reactivating terminated employees and changing their banking details to his own account. So this can be a good test for payroll. For vendor management, a helpful test is frequent changes to sensitive field in vendor master file. So for example, a vendor's address is changed to an unauthorized location. So after you run the check for invoice payment, the check has been sent, the address, and it's reverted back after the release of the check. So these are just few of the many tests that you can start with when you start your fraud management program. But I would like to step back first and discuss the different type of data analytics testing. So primarily, there are two types of data analysis testing, ad hoc and continuous. So the goal of ad hoc testing is to get an answer to a specific business question. So ad hoc testing lets you explore and investigate your data. You can look into a transaction and see if there's anything to indicate fraud that has occurred or to identify opportunities for fraud to happen. So let's say an employee address matches a vendor address. So you can go and find that specific information. Compare a vendor master file against the employee master file and look for match record. So if you find something there, it could be an indicative of somebody setting themselves up as a phantom vendor. So with ad hoc testing, you can run tests to uncover specific opportunities where fraud could occur. But still, this is really manual and time-consuming. And if that sort of anomaly seems to be relatively prevalent, or there's a certain exposure risk that you're not, or your organization are not comfortable with, maybe you would want to investigate it on a recurring basis, which leads us to the second type of testing. Continuous analysis for fraud detection means setting up scripts to run against large volumes of data to identify anomalies as they occur. This method can really improve the overall efficiency, consistency, and quality of your fraud detection processes. Create scripts, test them, and run them against your data sets so you get periodic notification when anomalies are detected or potential anomalies are detected. So you can run this script every night to go through all your transactions and then get notified of trends and patterns and route any exceptions to the management. So it gives you a proactive way of detecting fraudulent activity early before small occurrences escalate to a bigger problems. So for example, a very classic example is purchase card. Purchase card abuse is a prevalent problem because big organizations often have large volumes of P-card purchases. So to help to address that, you can run a script that tests all P-card transactions as they occur to make sure that they are in accordance with your controls that you put in place. Automating testing on obvious problems such as P-cards frees up your team to investigate other areas where things could be going wrong, or to focus on those tasks and projects that require a lot of time and manual attention. But why is it important to progress your data analytics program to continuous monitoring for fraud program? And how are we going to implement continuous monitoring program? So the Association of Certified Fraud Examiner, or ACFA, reported that the typical fraud case goes on for 16 months before it's detected. There are obvious advantages to detecting fraud quickly. So once a test has been developed to uncover a specific fraud indicator, it makes more sense to report the analysis on a regular basis. How often you run the test depends on your goals, and the size of your organization. For example, in the case of monitoring payment and revenue transactions, it might make sense to perform automated testing on a daily basis. But for something like a P card and travel and entertainment and payroll, you may only need to perform testing on a weekly or a monthly basis to align with your payment frequency. To progress your data analysis into continuous monitoring, there are four basic steps or four important steps. The first step is to collect, compile, and standardize and compare data from different systems and separate instances. So this may involve multiple databases and numerous fields within different tables. Something far beyond what can you reasonably accomplish using manual process. So by identifying specific fields, which is system you want to query, and aggregating this data, you can actually contextually analyze the entire data population to identify anomalies and exceptions. Data access and blending is 80% of the job, but it becomes incredibly challenging and expensive when many tools are involved. And knowing what the questions to ask your data in context of your fraud risk and control domain is very critical in this activity. Step 2, with the data sources identified, data can be extracted for analysis across entire population, not just a sample. Recurring analysis can be easily automated to free up time and ensure analysis consistently performed every time. So the analysis can be configured to suit the periodicity of your organization. Let's say hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. So this removes the burden of needing to remember to execute this ad hoc basis, which can result in a backward-looking point of view on exceptions. Step 3, and very important, is on remediation. So as a result of the analysis, exceptions are being identified. The continuous monitoring technology allows inspection of data flows and the ability to distribute that intelligently to individuals for further investigation using tools like surveys and questionnaire. For example, you can reduce the false positive by automatically combining human insights with raw data. For example, triggering automatic questionnaire where certain criteria are being met. So let's say, for example, if the potential duplicate invoice is more than 100,000, then you can automatically send a notification on trigger. Step 4, once exceptions are identified and verified, alert to stakeholders should be built in. For example, the control owners, the compliance officers, or fraud officer for investigation, incident management, and remediation. So the system should be able to automatically alert pre-designated person about issues or exceptions, send reminder if not look within a specific amount of time, or escalate for further or urgent remediation. So there is no need to manually assign exception to stakeholders within the organization, which is a big savings. No need to worry about human error, and no need to physically chase down individuals to ensure the exception was taken care of. Where material exceptions are uncovered, the continuous monitoring technology can trigger remediation workflow to ensure the right people are notified and all within the context of preset priority statuses and escalation paths. The implementation of continuous monitoring program for fraud detection and prevention is proven beneficial, but can also require huge amount of investment in time and effort. But the good news is that Galvanize can help you with our ACR robotics solution. So ACR robotics is designed exclusively for governance professionals to help you more efficient by automating time-intensive and repetitive process. It goes beyond any simple analytics solution or BI technology. ACR robotics runs your data access, reporting, and remediation tasks from beginning to end. It also reduces the number of tools you need to provide data in real time and frees up your time so you can focus on delivering insight that will have the greatest impact. So few of the capabilities of ACR Robotics is the ability to extract data from different data sources like your ERP, customer relationship management. It can also centralize your data analytics program to collaborate between your different teams. It can automate remediation and collaboration workflows, so you can actually notify your stakeholders when a potential fraud is identified by the system and can create automatic alert and notification, and also capture evidence for investigation. It also has a built-in metrics and triggers to proactively monitor your fraud. So you can build your KRIs to actually create threshold so that if your KRIs goes beyond your threshold, it will automatically send notification to the different stakeholders in your organization. It can also automatically assess your risks, your fraud risks. And lastly, it can create a real-time data-driven storyboard that actually visualize your story about your fraud program. So even at Galvanize, actually we leverage on storyboards actually to communicate to our board with regards to our financial results, HR data, and also Net Promoter Scores. Just to summarize, here's another diagram to help you visualize on how continuous monitoring powered by ACR Robotics to use in the fraud detection prevention programs. So ACR Robotics technology platform connects you to any data source that you run sophisticated fraud analytics and detects anomalies or patterns that you simply can't illuminate with any amount of random sampling or generic business intelligence. ACR Robotics gives you a centralized platform for collaborative team-based work and also continuous monitoring and remediation workflow. So just to end up this session, I would like to give you 4 takeaways. One is fraud is real and it's costing us substantially. One of the most valuable technologies to fight fraud is data analytics. Using technologies such as ACR Robotics is the key to have an effective and efficient implementation of continuous monitoring program for fraud. And lastly, Galvanize can help you to kick off your fraud detection and prevention program. So thank you everyone for your attention. In closing, I would like to leave you with some of these resources. You can visit our website, wegalvanize.com/fraud. And you can email me at aris.talapian@wegalvanize.com, and you can connect with me in my LinkedIn. You can search on my profile, it's Aris Talapian. So with that, let's move into Q&A, and thank you very much.
Wow, right on time. Thank you so much, Aris. Thank you. Can we give a thank you applause to Aris for his presentation before we break for lunch?
Thank you so much.
I do have one question for you. Since everyone is work from home and you can't fly, and none of your team able to go to on-premises to install this, can we do this online? Can this basically be accessed in cloud, etc., etc.?
That's really an awesome question. So the ACR Robotics solution is based on cloud solution. It's a SaaS solution. It's pure cloud. We have a component, we call it the results module and the storyboard and the visualization. These are all in cloud, which is sitting AWS. So you can actually do your remediation workflow, online investigation, or online collaboration with your different stakeholder, all in cloud. So you can actually do it in your mobile device. You can conduct your investigation on your mobile device and even on your web browser.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, I know that you guys are all hungry. We're gonna break for lunch, come back at 2 p.m. and we continue with a 3 breakout. I believe that all of you have the link for the 3 breakout. So I see you at 2 p.m. for the exciting session. Thank you so much, Aris. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
for coming.
I appreciate it.
Hopefully that you guys have enjoyed today. Yeah. Thank you, Aris. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.